everyone. Welcome to the Mango Publishing Heart Wisdom panel. I'm super happy to be here. My name is Sherry Reichert-Ballou. My book is Say It Now, 33 Creative Ways to Say I Love You to the most important people in your life. And today we are talking about the secrets of strong relationships. And obviously just in time for the holidays, where lots of joy in our relationships and maybe also some hard times. Karen and I were just talking a little bit before we went live that it can trigger some things, right? Some of us can become like young kids again when we visit our families and traveling with our spouses. So I'm happy to be here with you. And I'm going to start off and just have our wonderful authors introduce themselves. And when you're doing so, if you want to just like start us off while you're introducing yourself with what is a strong relationship in your mind? And Karen, we'll start with you.
Oh, good. So my name is Karen Anderson, and I am the author of my newest book with Mango is You Are Not Your Mother, Releasing Generational Trauma and Shame. It's my fourth book with Mango. And I think a strong relationship is when the two people in the relationship are able, or, know themselves well enough, know their triggers, know their shame points, their, the things that trigger them, and are able to laugh about those things, connect on those things. It's funny, you were asking up for stories, and a story that just popped into my head from a while ago was I call it the rice cooker story, and I can share that later in this if we want, as an example of that being part of a strong relationship.
Ooh. Well, do you want to? Can you tell us right now so we don't have to wait?
Let's do it. Don't hold us hanging.
I know.
So, I don't know. In the past year or so, I bought a rice cooker. It's just a cheap little thing, and it has like two settings: cook and warm. Right? You plug it in, you put the rice, you put the water, cook, and then when it's done, it clicks over to warm. So I'm cooking some rice, and it clicks over to warm, and I open it up, and it's full of water. Still. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I closed it back up. I put it back on cook. And then later we're eating dinner. And I say to my husband, it might be a little overcooked and I explained what happened. And he was like, oh, well, why didn't you just drain the water? And because I know myself so well, and I know I have a trigger of the I'm stupid variety. Oh. That came up, right? Aww. And I started to launch into like my, but I caught it. I was like, and I laughed out loud. I was like, oh my God, I caught it in the moment. Like, and it was such a win. It was like such a funny thing, like a rice cooker, right?
Yeah.
And I know my husband doesn't think I'm stupid.
Right.
But that still lives in there. And because I'm so aware of it, it's like, oh, that's all it was.
Yeah. I love that. I love that story. Yeah.
I do too. And I love that it was kind of a quote unquote small moment, right? Because those are the ones where I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just freaked out about the milk or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, particularly since most people just stick a bag and do the 1 minute rice these days. It's very impressive that you have a real rice cooker in 2023.
So besides that little problem in that one time, do you like the rice cooker? Should I get one?
Yeah, I use it quite often, and it doesn't, this one was cheap and it doesn't always work exactly right, but usually we get rice at the end of it at some point.
Sounds like most relationships.
We usually get rice at the end.
You know, and I love that, Julie. I thought you were gonna like delve into her relationship, which was
You can do that
I
still.
can
She's
do
got
that.
time.
I do.
Oh,
I
wait,
do that too.
before we go there, people want to know who you are. Let's start
Yeah.
with Julie, then we'll go to David, and then we'll go to Brenda. Julie, tell us about you.
Sure. So my name is Julie Bullit. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've been doing family therapy, individual therapy, group therapy for well over 30 years. And I love working with people. I love being a therapist. I feel so honored that people trust me with their stories, their hardships. And David and I do work together as well. So we both have our own practices, and then we do relationship work together. And we've written 2 books, and we're getting ready to launch a podcast in January.
That is so great.
Yeah.
And I know the name of your book, but will you just share so that anybody listening right now can jot that down right away?
Sure. This our most recent book on Mango is Secrets of Strong Couples, which fits right into what we're talking about today.
100%. Yes. Thank you. Love it.
Yeah.
Oh, Julie, what's your definition of a strong relationship?
Well, it's interesting because as you asked that question, I organically had my own thoughts, but then I really started to think about the book and the couples that we interviewed for the book, because this book is really delving into people's difficult stories.
Yeah.
And so kind of the things that keep people together. So it's going to be a mix, but I think a definition of a good relationship is someone that has your back, someone that you can be vulnerable with. You can screw up your rice and not feel bad about it. And I have a similar story to tell you, Karen, about a train situation that just recently happened that triggered me in a very similar way as the rice. So yeah, somebody that you can just be, real with and that you can count on.
Love that. I love that.
I agree with that too. That definition.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Just lean on hers. So I'm David Bullit. I'm with Julie. That's my claim to fame. I'm with Julie. I've been a divorce lawyer for 37 years and have seen good, bad, and ugly of I don't know how many thousands of clients over the years. And I've also been appointed by courts to represent children in contested custody cases. I've mediated many, many domestic and divorce cases over the years. And over the last 5, 6, 7 years, Julie and I have started put our respective brains together, as far apart as they often are on the continuum of what people should or shouldn't do in a relationship. And we've been working together on the book that you just talked to you about, one that came out in 2020. And we've been speaking to a lot of companies, and we do a fair number of TV appearances and things like that. One was earlier today at the local Fox. So if our eyes are glazing over, it's because we were in studio for about an hour earlier today. But we talk about what people need to do to strengthen their relationships, and I'm just going to fall back on sort of what we developed, I guess, about 2 years or so ago. We call it the 3 C's, right? Connection, communication, and consistency. So you got, in order to have a successful relationship, you got to be able to connect, you got to be able to communicate, you got to be able to do them both consistently. And let's be honest about it. No one can do it every day, right? But Karen was able to do it over the rice cooker, which is a good thing. But you don't know what's going to happen next time with some other appliance in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So, but I think that's what you need to do, and consistently doesn't mean every minute of every day or even every day. Often, sometimes we all have off days. But if we're able to sort of toggle back to those 3 concepts, I think those are real 3 big keys. There's lots of drill downs from that. 3 big keys to folks being successful in a relationship.
Oh, I love that. I love that. 3 C's. That's so great. And Brenda, before I have you introduce yourself, I had many favorite quotes from both of your books, but one of them that I just thought of from Julie and David's book, I'm just going to read because I think it fits into what makes a strong couple or any kind of relationship. You said, the couples who persevere through life's most difficult trials find a way to play those cards they are dealt together. They gather their chips and stay at the table and prepare themselves for the next hand. And I love that because even, of course, in our friendships, right? We're playing the cards that we have at the moment. And back to the old rice cooker, which I think we're going to keep referring to, but it's like, sometimes that happens, right? There's a rice cooker moment, and that's what we're dealt.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you're sitting there with, a 2, 4, 7 and king, and you just got nothing. He's got nothing. But whereas the next day, maybe you got a full house, and things are flying along swimmingly. And that. Yeah. I like the analogy. I made it, so I really do like it. As you picked up.
I love it too. I love those sorts of things because it's easy to get, and it's a reminder that we're playing together, which I think in any relationship, that's super important. We're a team, so I love that. Okay, Miss Brenda, none of us would be here without you. So welcome.
Well, I'm a publisher of Mango, but I'm also a fan of all of you. And I was thinking about what my definition of love. And I realized that I have this incredible advantage because I get to read, as in edit, so many relationship books, including yours, Sherry, which is about love too. And so I sort of take the wisdom and then rearrange it and customize it into my, apply it to my life. And so something I developed just in the last couple of years, if you have you need, so my definition is lovingly honest, a great relationship is lovingly honest. And of course, when you have to talk to somebody about something, the honest part, that can be tricky. And so I took a lot of the wisdom from Karen and the Bullits and you, and then other authors. And I came up with this, this sort of routine where I explain what the issue is and then say, I'm telling you that because I tough love you.
I love it.
And it especially works with younger relatives, nieces and nephews and kids and things like that. But it works with adults too. And even people in their 80s and 90s, because you have to, a relationship isn't real unless it's honest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that. I tough love you. I'm going to be using that probably in this holiday season.
Yeah,
yes, feel free. I was excited to share it because it really was I do drink in all of the wisdom, and then I'll sort of come up with my own recipe.
Love it.
I know.
I love the expression fierce love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's sort of, and it's funny because that was sort of my guiding principle that I chose late last year for this year. And it served me. I have a different guiding principle coming up for this year, for 2024, which is heart wide open.
Oh,
but wow. Fierce love, I mean, you don't leave fierce love behind. It comes with you.
Yeah.
But fierce love to me, right, is the idea of, it's that honesty of sometimes we do need to sort of tap into our more mammalian aspects, right? To have access to healthy anger.
Sure.
Right, which gives us the opportunity, in a moment of hurt, to say, ouch, no, don't do that. Mm-hmm. Right? Versus it can get all tangled up and internalized, and then it comes out in sideways and in ways that we don't like it to.
Oh, Karen, you just tapped right into what I was going to ask you guys first. I love this. You're right on a psychic wavelength with me. Because where I wanted to start with all of you is a place that I think when Karen just said tangled up, right? So we're going into the holiday season. I was actually just with a client I was coaching this morning. She was talking about that sort of tangle of feelings when she's around one of her family members. Yeah. And not knowing, she actually said, sometimes I don't know if I'm just crazy, I'm overly sensitive, I'm to this or I'm to that, or is it them? Should I talk to them? How do I handle, you know what I mean? And I think this is something that a lot of people deal with. Can we just sort of look at how do people know what to do in that moment?
Yeah. And families are very complicated, and they do, just tap right into your vulnerabilities. You came from somewhere, and these people that are your family know that, they know you. And so it's easy to get right back into feeling small and little again.
There was a show on, I think it's on Netflix, I can't recall, called The Bear, which takes place in a restaurant, mostly takes place in a restaurant in Chicago. But there was a really interesting scene right along the lines that you're talking about that took place at a Christmas dinner with all these family members that a lot of them don't see each other but for Christmas dinner. And sure enough, you saw this dynamic that's exactly what you're talking about, just sort of picking at wounds and that sort of thing, and people unable to just let it go, and I think we all have those things. We go to family gatherings, oh gosh, when's this one going to do this? When's he going to do that? And then this happened, frankly, not that long ago with us at a family gathering. It wasn't holiday related. Where one of the things I hate is when somebody orders dinner for me, right? I cannot stand that. So sure enough, somebody at this gathering is ordering, and it just scraped my last nerve. But that's a little off topic. Yeah, a little bit off topic, but
it's a therapy session.
Yeah. Kind of like that. Yeah. That's what Sherry said. So I'm just following the guidelines.
Yeah,
I think it's tough. Families can be difficult, and holidays bring about lots of happiness and lots of joy and lots of looking forward to things, but also lots of stresses.
Well, David, so I want you to keep going, because that's my question is, I'm at the dinner table. I hate when people order for me. Someone just orders for me. Do I swallow, no pun intended, do I just swallow that? Or do I speak up, and how do I do it in a way that's going to support the relationship and not be critical? There's so many questions. How did you handle it?
I handled it exactly the opposite way that she wanted me to handle it, which is I said, I can order my own, thanks very much, but I can figure it out for myself. And then I got called a couple of names and, that sort of thing. But it probably was a nicer way for me to say it, or I could have let it go. But you get to a certain age, or in my business, you get to a certain point where, and it's the same thing when I'm in front of a judge and I'm listening to what they're saying, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Whereas when I was 25, I might have been very deferential and respectful, but now 30 plus years later, I'm like, oh, hold on a second, and so it's there's a better way to do it than I probably did it, but
he's probably going to be doing some apologizing the next time we see this family member, and he's going to have to repair the relationship, and that's okay.
No, I'm not going to do any such thing.
Go, Karen. I was going to ask you.
I love this because I have a similar sort of, not really story, but the story isn't actually the important part. But something that I have created and I use with my clients is something that I call intentional identity. And when you know that you're going to be with someone who pushes your buttons, pulls triggers, all those things, right? You can ask yourself, right, which of my intentional identities, or I call them pillars that uphold intentional identity, which one do I want to lean on? And I outline the process of coming up with intentional identity in my book. And I do have an intentional identity. And this past year, it was called Fierce Love. But the pillars remain the same no matter what I call it. And my pillars are dignity, expression, and audacity.
Ooh.
And they all feel different. They all have a different energy.
David's writing them down because he's learning right now, which is fabulous.
I mean, but you could call your pillar something else. And the process of going through and figuring out what your pillars are going to be, I have a whole process for that. Mine are dignity, expression, and audacity. And sometimes when I am interacting with my mom, I choose dignity. But that includes me. Right? It's not just I'm doing this for her. I'm not swallowing this just for her. I've made a conscious choice that I want to show up a certain way that I know I will like and respect myself at the end.
Ooh.
Right? Now, I also sometimes choose audacity. That is a very different experience.
Yeah.
And that is more along the lines of stop it.
Yeah.
Don't order for me today.
Yeah.
Right? don't do that. Don't say that. Now, I'm not trying to order her around, but it's like a warning. You're getting close to an edge of a place I don't want to go. And you can tell how I'm speaking, even that my energy shifts.
Yeah.
And the practice of it, it's kind of hard to explain it easily, but the way that I guide people through this is by having them remember times in their lives, different times. There's different prompts for, like, there's 3 or 4, I think 4 maybe. And then remembering these times in your life and sort of examining them for, like, what was alive in you in that moment that you loved.
Wow.
Right? What did you respect about yourself in that moment that thing happened?
Yeah.
And so then you begin to build, and I can even show you what mine looks like. It's just a sheet of paper. Some people do vision boards and whatnot, but this is dignity, expression, and audacity. And I have phrases that remind me of memories. And I look at this, not every day, but hopefully I look at it every day. And I, there's things on here that all I have to do is remember that, and I bring myself into that energy so easily.
Yeah, that's cool. That's neat.
Yeah.
That is. I love
An
that.
example of one of the things that are in the audacity block.
Go with something else, honey. I think you have plenty of audacity.
Anyway, I'm sure.
One of them is fuck yeah.
Okay, well, okay.
I didn't know if we were allowed to say that word on here.
Well, I just did.
Okay.
I don't know. We're gonna have to bleep her out later. I don't know.
So funny, just little like follow up to, as David was talking about, like getting triggered with the family member and whatever. And one of the other shows that he watched that he really liked, which was, what was the show where the guy tells everybody to fuck off?
Oh, what was that?
We'll just say F. We'll just say F.
Okay. So there's a show that we watched. It's a Succession. Okay. And basically the guy in the show basically tells everybody F off. Okay. So I think that David really kind of took that in as like, how cool is that? And this guy is being, audacity is one of his pillars, and he's going to tell people how it is. So I think that sort of like comes out a lot, lately. And I think as he gets older, he feels like he has the right to kind of say what he wants and doesn't want. And sometimes he says it in a more interesting way.
But it getting back to the whole family discussion, it is a difficult balance. Sometimes you got to keep a lot of balls up in the air. You got a lot of mixed personalities, especially if you're in a family that's blended in some fashion, right? Where maybe you have stepchildren, or maybe you're a foster parent, or whatever the case may be. You've got to be sensitive to everybody. Everybody comes to that table from a different place, and it can be very trying and very difficult for people to sort of navigate those issues around the holidays. It really can.
Yeah.
Well, what's coming up for me listening to you is also that there's a very different thing about how we might be, bring that audacity into a family versus the clerk at the store who, treats us poorly, right? Because part of it is our intentions, I think, for, what do these people mean to me? How do I want them in my life?
Mm-hmm.
How, what am I building with them? You've got a whole different relationship going on with people that are long-term, obviously.
Yeah. There's a different buy-in, if you will,
exactly.
Somebody that's, in your family that's a parent or grandparent or niece or nephew or whatever. And then somebody at a, at a grocery store, for sure.
And for people who are, just toggling back to my other career for a second, for people who are going through separation and divorce or thinking about it, this time of year is just the worst. Mm-hmm. It's just absolutely. I went through a period of years where I just said, okay, I'm turning my everything off from about December 20th until January 2, because it was never ending conflict, never ending arguing, fighting. The kids aren't here. Mm-hmm. He did that. She did that. And it can be very, very stressful, not only for the families that are intact and having dinner together, but also those where that they've broken up or in the process of splintering in some fashion.
Wow. What I hear that you're not saying, tell me if this is, I'm projecting, which is that, go into this time of year knowing that there's going to be hard stuff, and maybe not make any big decisions, or maybe not make any big declarations during these hard times. I mean, that's
realistic expectations is important. We had a discussion this morning. I'm telling you, it's very similar to discussion we had this morning, where people were talking about, should we get engaged over the holidays? And my answer to the woman who was interviewing us said, absolutely not. Absolutely do not do it. Do not make those kinds of decisions. Don't have somebody else have to make. It's like getting a puppy.
Yes.
What happens when all these people buy their kids puppies and give them to on Christmas or during the holidays? By January 15th, places are filled with dogs that people didn't want. So don't, enjoy the holidays. And then if you want to make a lifetime decision, wait till the 5th, 6th, 10th, 10th. Don't wait till Valentine's Day either. That's another bad time to do it.
Oh my goodness, I love it. Brenda, why were you making the yes, I agree sign?
Well, it also stresses out your whole family too, because the holidays are enough, like, just meals and shopping and gifts and decorating and parties, like that's enough. And then to layer that on, which is like, it's just too much. So it's, they haven't thought it through. So I love that you give them that advice. By the way, Julie and David are so fantastic on TV when they're on shows. I can't wait to see the new Fox show. I usually watch it 2 or 3 times and always pick up some tips.
Well,
and also I can tell that like the hosts are asking like personal questions for their life. And so I love that like back and forth that I see, but they're really next level.
Thank you.
What is the name of the show?
This was a local Fox. If you go to fox5dc.com, it's probably the episode will be up tomorrow. We were there throughout today's episode. Usually we go for a 5 or 6 minute, little piece, but today we did a co-host where we were
cooking and making
cocktails and building out mediocre advice.
I'm not mediocre at all. I'll share it on Mango's Facebook and everything. I always do. So, but like definitely it's worth taking the 3 to 5 minutes, and then I tell you, you're going to watch it again like I do.
Oh, nice. Thanks, Brenda. We'll send you the check that we owe you.
Okay, so I have sort of a little bit of a follow-up question. It's not necessarily about the holidays per se, although it could be, but my question, and this is for all of you, which is, how do people know, when it's time to like roll up our sleeves and really like give our all to any relationship, or when it's time to say, that's it, I've had enough, I'm sorry, no more?
That's a good question, Sherry. And we actually did an episode. I don't know if it was a podcast or a Facebook Live or something, and it was called "Should I Stay or Should I Go?"
Oh my God! I did a blog post on that like 5 years ago. I used that same, and I actually referenced the song.
Yeah,
this is great. Then I just asked all the perfect people.
You did, yeah. So that it's interesting, like what's okay in a relationship, or what is just like to the point where you would be like, no, this is not going to work out. Don't even bother.
It's the old Kenny Rogers song, right? Know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, and know when to run. There's television show. It's like Restaurant Impossible, where these people are putting every last nickel into their restaurant. You can look in the first 15 minutes and know that they're going to go broke. Right. So sometimes it's very difficult to know the answer to that question. I have a lot of people that come to me, right, who just weren't sure for 20 years, but they sort of put it aside because they had families to raise, children to get where they needed to go, and so forth, and couldn't just, it's going to get better. Well, it's not better. Yeah, it's going to get better. I'm not really sure. And then what I've seen happen with a lot of folks is that when the kids grow up and out, right, and now all of a sudden there's not all that stuff that's going on in your universe at the house, and you're sitting at a table looking across the table at this person, you say, I don't really know them anymore. And that's not the way I want to live my life. I want to have things and so forth. But I don't know that there's, it's kind of, you should know it when you see it. And sometimes you don't, but you might have a friend who does, right? Who says, what are you doing? But it's very difficult. And it's not like how to make a decision about when you're going to trade your car in. You talk about the person that you may have spent a year, 10 years, 20, 40, 50 years of your life with, doing all these life events with, and then trying to decide whether that's how you want to spend the last 5 years or 10 years or 20 years. It's a very difficult question to answer, and probably would be different for all of us on the screen.
Yeah. Everybody has a different journey. And we David and I had infertility for years. We had secondary infertility. And a lot of people would contact me about, and then we ended up adopting 2 of our 4 children. And people will call me a lot about adoption. They're thinking about adoption. They're maybe still doing fertility treatments. And people will often say, like, how do I know, is 3 IVF treatments, the end, or am I going to do 16 of them? Or, what do I do? How do I know when I'm sort of like done with the fertility stuff and I should move with adoption? And that's a very, everybody's journey. Everybody can, jump over different hurdles, and some people want to do different things. So it's a really hard question. There's no measure, no manual about, okay, this relationship is, has this, and this, you got to get out. I mean, the people in the book that we interviewed, the 17 people that made it in the book, that made it through these really difficult things, any one of them could have been told or thought, like, oh no, get out. Like, this is not going to work. Like, start over again, like move. But these people made it. And that's sort of the beauty of relationships, is that they can be repaired.
Yeah. And in my case, it's not romantic relationships. It's generally mother-daughter relationships, mother-adult-daughter relationships. And most of the time I'm answering that question from an adult daughter. And it's the same thing. I mean, there's no right answer. But the way I approach it is, because and again, it's, in this case, it's not like, I mean, maybe sometimes they're living together, but it's not like a romantic relationship that they've been together for 20 years in that kind of a setting. This is a different dynamic for sure. But what I coach around is making a decision, again, kind of from this intentional identity perspective of, who do I want to be? And do I need to take a break? I think a lot of adult daughters, and myself included, found that I didn't know who I was apart from my mother for the longest time. And I needed some separation, emotional separation, to figure out, like, okay, well, what do I value? What boundaries do I need? And is it possible for me to live from my values, live from my intentional identity, have healthy boundaries, and have it work?
Yeah.
And the answer to that is sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
And
that makes sense.
Yeah. And it's, a lot of people think that what I do is tell adult daughters to estrange themselves from their mothers, and I don't. That's not my job. Now, there are some of my clients who do make that choice. But most of my clients want to make it work in some way. And so we, try to find that way. And the 3 main things that I work with my clients on are creating internal safety, creating that intentional identity, and creating then healthy boundaries based on that intentional identity.
Yeah.
Because, again, that triggery thing happens, right?
Really good. Yeah. Really important things.
Yeah.
So Karen, I wanted to ask you, because the work that you do is, so deep. And I mean, most of us have mothers or had mothers at some point in time, or mother figures in our lives.
All did, yes.
Yes. We all came from somewhere, right?
So smart.
So I'm curious, because I've thought about this a lot, and I wonder about it, and I wanted your take on it. So in some family systems, there's a lot of cutoffs. So, and you see this, like if you study, if you interviewed families, you'll see like Uncle Bill, stopped talking to everybody, or Aunt Sarah's, ousted in the family or whatever. And I often wonder, I mean, there's obviously, patterns that reoccur, but is there anything like genetic wise that we could point to understand when people like tend to cut off more or tend not to cut off when it's even unhealthy? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, from a genetic or scientific or biological perspective, no, I don't. That's not my jam at all. I do think that there are, I know that the word, trauma is tossed around a lot these days, nervous system, regulation, dysregulation, abuse, like patterns in families, generational trauma, like all that kind of thing. I think we can look at, they're like, it's, I think the term is epigenetics.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that,
yes.
Right. So, the studies are that traumas that happen 3 or 4 generations ago filter down through families, and it might look different the farther down it gets.
Right.
I think that in the old days, right, let's say 100 years ago, right, there may have been like trauma, like World War I, trauma. The next generation, there might be alcoholism, right, and abuse. In the next generation, it might be, I'm not talking to anybody in my family. Now, I can't, that's not like a study or but that's just a theory.
Yeah. Interesting. I was just curious because as we talk about it, like how to know when to sort of create the boundary. And sometimes the boundary is a full on cut, like.
Which I did with my mom in 2010, sort of before I knew anything that I know now.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and right now she has chosen not to speak to me.
Oh.
So yeah, it's a fascinating dynamic, and I'm really grateful for what I do know and what I practice, and yeah. It's it's funny. I actually just posted something on Facebook that said, no matter what side of the estrangement equation you're on, and I have been on several of those sides, right, cultivating a sense of patience and compassion for all parties involved, including yourself, right, is really helpful. That doesn't mean you're not going to feel guilt or anger or hurt, right, or sad or grief. And it also doesn't mean that you're not going to have healthy boundaries or that you're going to trample somebody else's, somebody who's chosen not to speak to you. But I know for myself, being able to have the capacity to hold what's happening between me and my mom in a sort of compassionate container helps.
Yeah. So I think you're bringing up a really important point in, as we're talking about relationships, whether it's your mom or your spouse or your child, is that ability to perspective take. So it's not just about you, it's about what someone else is feeling and how that may affect their behavior. And I think, to be in a relationship, we've been married for 37 years. We're both pretty decent at perspective taking, but it doesn't always come naturally. We have to pull back.
And it does for me. It's easy.
No, but I mean, I think that's what you're talking about, Karen, is like the ability to understand that your mom is dealing with something and feeling something, and that, that is some of her stuff.
And right, also, it's not my responsibility.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you brought up the term repairing relationships before, and I'll just be completely transparent that, like, when I first started learning some of the stuff that I, practice now, I I think I went into it thinking, oh, now I know all these tools, I can repair this relationship. I wasn't thinking the term repair, but I was like, I can make this relationship better. And it didn't. It didn't make it better. And I have come to the realization that I really do have to understand what's mine and what's not mine. And no matter how old I am, there is a power differential that will always be there.
Oh.
And so it's not that I'm going to just say, well, forget her, but it's not my job to repair the relationship. And I think that is sort of an outgrowth of the shame work that I've done. Right, is to realize, and again, not that like I'm putting it on her necessarily, but that as an adult child, I don't think I can repair it. Like, yeah, I could pretend and be someone different, or try, people please, or try to be who she wants me to be, but that's not, I don't want to abandon myself anymore in that way. So,
yeah.
I'm going to have to hop off in a moment. So I just wanted to say that I think we live in the age of toxic friendships. And I thought that was something that just was like younger people, young women, girls, mean girls experience. But I recently had an experience where a friend sent a text to me that was intended to her husband. And she was like denigrating me. And I realized that like the relationship was transactional, and that like somehow like money, like, money, like me as a source of money, like seemed to be like the real purpose of the relationship. And so I just stepped away from it. Like, I just stepped away. I didn't, there were, we had like a final dinner, and I said, okay, we're even now. And then I just literally stepped away. But like, and like, I guess I've read so many relationship books now that like, I didn't like, I wasn't freaked out. I wasn't confused. I was just like, oh, I guess this is a toxic friendship, and I'm done. But I definitely think that like, I hear, amongst my other friends, I just hear them talking about friendship relationships, and like, they can be, seems like they're trickier than they were in the good old days. Like,
Well, I think also the technology and the disconnectedness of our world makes things harder. I mean, I think we used to like, see friends more frequently in person. I think there was, more connections, and now texting and emailing and, that kind of thing just gets in the way of a lot of true connection.
Well, I mean, it works both ways. You wouldn't be able to be doing this, but for technology. I mean, you guys are I know Brenda's on the West Coast. We're on the East Coast. I don't know where you are, Karen, but
I'm in Connecticut, so East Coast.
You're on the East Coast, but you're 500 miles.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's great things about technology too.
But technology has made, and I see it in my kids, where it's easy to just, did you call, I haven't heard back from so-and-so. Well, what did you call him? No, I sent him an email. So we'll pick up the phone and call her. And it's a different way of doing things. And I think in some ways it's great, but in some ways it causes more trouble if you're not aware of what's out there. And things are, as you know, when things are conveyed electronically, sometimes you can take something completely out of perspective, out of the way that's not the way that someone meant it. I mean, I'm guilty.
In this case, it was.
Yeah.
Well, right. But I think
sometimes you know exactly what they're saying.
Yeah, sometimes you do. No, that's true. But sometimes too, you're inferring some sort of a tone that isn't really intended. But the direct connection that people have lost a bit of as a result of technology is a downside for sure, it seems to me.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're bringing this up, because I strongly agree with that. Okay, we love you, Brenda.
Bye.
That I think there's something really important here that we're touching in on, which is intentional connected time with people in person if you can. Yeah. Or I'm going back to Karen's, intentional identity, that being aware that when we're sending off a quick text, or a quick email, that it's possible that our intentions are not going to be conveyed. And so I'm such a big fan of the sort of like pause, who do I want to be right now, is the way I phrase it. Like, part of the reason this works right now with all of us on Zoom, I imagine, we're all like came with intentions. This is the Heart Wisdom panel. We came with the intention to, to share,
not say the F word.
Whoops.
I think there's the F word is somewhere.
Sometimes it makes you feel better.
Yeah, it does. So
oh my gosh.
Fine, I'm fine with your rice cooker story and we're friends. It's no problem.
So I do think that, as we're talking about all of this, that it's like, that's one piece of a strong relationship, right? Like that it's like, I know it's not always possible to be in person with people, but I just want to put a plug in that making that effort is everything. I have never regretted a plane ticket to a friend's wedding, to a friend's party, to when somebody's in the hospital. I have never regretted any of those efforts, the time or the money, because that's really part of showing our love.
Yeah.
Agree.
We sort of apply that a little bit, in the couples world, where we started about a year ago, this sort of no tech 90 idea, which is, if you're going out with your significant other, 90 minutes, no TV, no phones, no texting, no checking your social media, and you talk to whoever you want, but stay. Don't get pulled away, and it's easy to get pulled away.
Yeah, and how many times have you guys gone out, recently or in the last few years, and you see a couple or family out to dinner, and everybody's in a screen, and I just am like, oh my God, that's so terrible, right?
Yeah, not to mention, who are they talking to? Why are they so important?
Who's more important is what I always think. Like, if you know what I mean? Like, if I'm across the table from someone, who's more important than that person? Unless it's an emergency, right? Like,
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I actually love when I'm with all of my family, my like immediate family, and I can put my phone away, and I know that nobody that's important or that important to me will need me. And it's such a freeing experience, right? Because like, for instance, today we were on the live TV show, and I have a watch that rings, and I see one of my kids calling, and I couldn't do anything about it. I ordinarily would have, or I would have texted back, hey, what's up? I'm, in the middle of something. And so we get off the show, and I said, oh, Josie must have forgot that we were like, on, doing this TV thing. And we come to find out she had a flat tire on the highway.
oh,
And it was a very appropriate phone call that we would have absolutely like gone together or called AAA or whatever it was. So the technology is good, but it's not good. And here's the end result of a beautiful story is she's 20, she's going to be 26. She's going to be 26 in January. We didn't answer. Her boyfriend didn't answer. All the people that she called did not answer. They were all busy. And then so she went to her own problem solving, and she figured it out. And when we talked to her, a half hour later, she was like, oh, yeah, nobody answered, but I got it under control. I got AAA to come. And it was kind of like a good thing in some ways that, she took ownership of it and she figured it out.
I love that. I want to tell you guys, we've got Anthony's listening in, and he's enjoying what you're all talking about. And he asked a question, so I wanted to pass it on. And he wants to talk about seasonal affective disorder during the holiday season. And I'm guessing that what he's asking, this is my projection, but you can speak to any aspect of it, is what if we're going through that? Like, what if we're down and we're interacting with people? How do we handle that?
Yeah, absolutely. And, the interesting thing about SAD, seasonal affective disorder, is that I believe it's more prevalent than we even realize. I think that some people are actually, diagnosed with it and treated for it. But I know in my client world and what I see, in my office on a daily basis, so many people really struggle, I would say starting around September, end of September, October, with their mood issues.
Yeah.
And I think it's a direct correlation of the sunlight and, being outside and fresh air and vitamin D and all those things. So I think, yes, I think it's absolutely more prevalent than we know. And I think a lot of people have it without being, fully diagnosed with it. I think, like for sure, I'm in a better mood in the summer and when there's more sunlight. And so if you're going through that and you are also going to be around your family, I think it's important to be honest about like, hey, I've been a little down, or oh, you're looking for a holiday gift for me? How about one of those happy lights on, on Amazon? I'd love one of those, those kinds of things. But I think it's it can be even more difficult when you're not feeling great and you don't have the energy for your family.
Yeah. Karen, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, just, giving, I guess I often see things through the lens of shame, which is that, like, sometimes we have a tendency, like something like that, we're experiencing something like SAD, and then we're like, oh, and I shouldn't, or there must be something wrong with me, or, and if we're unconscious to that, it's like we are layering on top of something that's already not pleasant, right? We're layering on even more unpleasantness. And so, I mean, this is the kind of advice you hear everywhere, but it's so important. And that is to be gentle with yourself. It's like, notice your self-talk around it, right? And if you're like shaming yourself or in some way like belittling yourself, just check that.
Yeah. And then also realizing and knowing that this is a real thing.
Yeah.
This isn't something that you're making up, and mental health issues are very real, but they're invisible to so many people that people develop the shame around what's wrong with me. I can't prioritize what I need to do today, or I'm I can't go out because I'm feeling so anxious, or I'm feeling down and depressed. And the last thing I feel like doing is going to a holiday family dinner. So I do think that, just realizing, and you're right, the self-talk is so important, and having grace for yourself, like for others.
I love what you guys are saying, and not just in this one circumstance. Thank you so much, Anthony. I'm glad you're listening in. Not just in this one circumstance, but across the board, when it's the rice cooker moment, or it's the, restaurant moment, or it's whatever moment where we're just like scrambled. Like Karen said, I love that, not to layer. It's hard enough to be tangled up in our emotions, but not to layer on, there's something wrong with me, or what's wrong with me, any of it.
And oftentimes, right, the things that we say sound like, they don't sound like we're being mean to ourselves. It can almost be sort of humorous, like, oh God, I'm being so ridiculous, or, things like that. No, you're not being ridiculous. This is real.
Yeah. We had a moment when the technology wasn't working. David had set up the microphones. He's like, I'm so stupid. I can never get this right. I can't believe this. We went through this. And he was like beating himself up. And I'm like, listen, this isn't a big deal. And the computer is going to work, that we can use the, microphone on the computer, and I won't have to wear those headphones that mess up my hair. So this is actually better, that we're doing it this way.
Okay.
I love that. I just noticed we've got about 6 minutes left, which is not a lot of time, but it's enough. If there's anything that you feel like, oh, I really was hoping we would talk about this. Is there, for any of you, something you really wanted to bring into this conversation?
No, I'm comfortable with it, with any direction you wanted to go.
Yeah.
Okay, then I do have something. All right. It's from the bullets in your book. You talk about, in the first chapter, actually, you say disharmony can strengthen a relationship.
Sure.
And, what we're talking about is a lot of different kinds of disharmony. And I think that's a really important thing to maybe, obviously we're going to end on it, but I think it's an important thing to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, most of us can get through the good days without any problem. We're on the beach, we're in our bathing suits, we're having a drink, we're out to dinner, we're traveling. Those are good days. Those are easy, right? Those are easy. Not so easy when it's a Tuesday afternoon and you've been working for 12 hours and your spouse or significant other comes up and starts telling you things that need to be done, or what you forgot to do, or brings up a conflict that's been in existence for a while. Those are harder days. And then of course there's a lot harder ones than that, be it illnesses in the family, yes, or whatever it may be, child related issues, conflicts over kids. Those are not easy days. And we lived through a lot of those days ourselves. We had one child who was very, very challenging. And it was, and it's interesting, you know, and when you're in it, you're most focused on how to fix it at that point in time, without paying as much attention to, you know, what else is in the galaxy around you. And I think so for us in that particular instance, while we were able to pull ourselves through, there was a lot of times that we could have, you know, we could have hit each other with a golf club, kind of a thing. It was very, very challenging. And also looking back, we say, well, maybe there were things that we could have done better, or we could have paid closer attention to the other people in the family who are experiencing the same things. And, you know, so I think struggles, you know, it's like absence makes, how many cliches can you come up with? You know, you find a million
that which does not kill you makes you strong.
And it's all, you know, it all has a basis in truth. And so challenges, struggles, things that are difficult that you get through they help because then you appreciate the good times even more. And when the next challenge comes across, you've dealt with something and you're able to sort of use those same resources, those same tools.
I love that. I think that's really important, right? You know, and also I have experienced, you know, both with friendships and with, you know, sort of, you know, my romantic relationships, that it's like, it does deepen the intimacy. There is no doubt that when you've gone through something with someone and you've navigated it and you come out the other side, there's a different depth there. Karen, you're nodding. What do you want to add?
Well, just, you know, there's a child psychologist named Dr. Becky Kennedy, and she has a great TED Talk that has come out recently on basically rupture and repair. And what I love about her definition is that she says that rupture like has to take place, like the disharmony has to take place in order for the repair to happen. Because if there's nothing to repair, then there's nothing to repair. So like, but the intimacy, the strengthening of the relationship happens because of that.
Yeah. Just to know that you can stick through it, right?
Yeah.
That the person doesn't leave, like that attachment is there and you can count on that. Like no matter what happens, if you have a bad day or you do something that wasn't the best choice, like that person
would be in my best self
going.
Well, you learn by it. You learn the tools to toggle back 45 or 50 minutes ago. Learn the tools to communicate, right?
Yes.
You learn the tools to connect, and you realize that it's not something that you can just put away for a week or 2 weeks. So they have to do those kind of things over and over again consistently. And those are challenges that relationships face, all relationships. And I know, Karen, from listening to you, you know, you're talking mother and daughter relationships, and we talk about, you know, spousal relationships or significant other relationships. But challenges can make you stronger. And make your relationship stronger, make you more appreciative. Right?
And nobody chooses to have something difficult happen. But I think that you have to expect, if you want to any kind of relationship, whether it's a parent relationship, a mother-daughter relationship, or a romantic relationship, if you expect things to be beautiful all the time, you're going to be in for it.
Sadly disappointed.
Yeah. 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 And one of the things that strikes me with the work that I do, you know, in my office, and then we do some couples coaching as well, is how many people don't tackle the hard stuff and they just kind of sweep it under the rug until there's an explosion, like a big lump under the rug that can't be ignored anymore. And our message to the world about relationships is, you know, you have to tackle things as they come. Maybe you need a minute. We say, like, take a minute, not a week, right? Like sometimes you need to take a moment to gather yourself, to, you know, calm yourself down, to regulate yourself, but to come back to it, not to let it, go untouched, unnoticed, untalked about.
I love this. There's so many more places we could go. You guys are all so amazing. And I'm very grateful for this hour that we've had. I want to just have you, Karen, again, can you hold up your book, and then I'll have Julie and David hold up theirs. I know people will be interested. You are not your mother. And
is it backwards? Oh, well.
No, it's perfect.
it's perfect.
Oh, okay.
Karen, when did your book come out?
It came out in June.
Oh, nice. Okay.
June 13th. Yeah.
And I know, Julie and David, I know you've got a copy. Yep, there we go. Secrets of Strong Couples.
Yeah. So we were just a month after Karen in July of this past summer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you
And
have
I
it.
really highly encourage people to read these books. And I was doing a lot for myself with both of your books of just applying it to other kinds of relationships too, because a lot of the wisdom that you all share, it can be applied in a lot of different ways in our lives. So I encourage people to get those books. And again, thank you, Karen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
It was nice to meet you guys. Yeah.
Thank you guys for having us, and it was wonderful talking to you.
Have a great day. We really enjoyed it.
Bye.
It was wonderful. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.